professional musician is a musician who gets paid to play music, right? Wrong. You see, there are millions of struggling musicians, millions of musicians who are trying to get paid to play. Personally, myself, I employ around 120 musicians who perform every single week. We do around about 6,000 events every single year. And I get about 10 CVs from musicians every single day. Now, this breaks down into some musicians who play for a little bit, some musicians that'll have a decent-ish career, and some musicians that can play for the entirety of their life and never struggle for work. And these ones, well, they understand the code of what it is to be a professional musician. And many of them, even if they don't know they know the code, they know the code. Most musicians are wildly off when they try and get work, and that's because they fall at the first hurdle. They think that they are getting paid to play. You see, being a professional musician is about absorbing pressure. It's about solving problems. You think you get paid to stand on stage and play. No, you get paid to travel. You get paid to wait around. You get paid to set up. You get paid to pack down. You get paid for taking responsibility. So where does playing fit in? Because you're a good player, but who isn't? And let's face it, playing music for a living doesn't necessarily mean the music is hard. Let's face it, Mr. Brightside isn't that tough to play, and you can play it very well. But can you absorb pressure? Let me give you a bunch of examples. You have a bunch of gigs in the diary, except you can't do that one date. Your problem just became my problem. Your gear just isn't quite right, or there's something wrong with your gear. Your problem just became my problem. You haven't learned the songs well enough. Your problem just became my problem. You can't drive to the gig. Your problem just became my problem. You turn up to the gig and you're wearing a Family Guy t-shirt. Your problem just became my problem. I've got a million things to sort out and I'm emailing or texting you and you are taking your time to get back to me. Again, your problem just became my problem. And there are a million other things like this. There's a big list of them where your problem becomes my problem. So all professional musicians live by a code, and the more they adhere to all of the 10 commandments in this code, the easier it is to find work and the more work that they will find, and they will never be struggling for work for the rest of their lives. And we're going to look at those 10 commandments right now, starting with number 1, which is you honor the gigs that you take on. When I was a kid, my mother used to say to me, you take what you want to eat, but whatever you take, you eat. And it's the same thing. You take on the gig, you honor the gig. This isn't a free-for-all. I'll take on everything and I'll start swapping and changing and depping stuff in and depping stuff out. That is great for the short term, works really well for you. The problem is you start making a name for yourself. Oh, you're not that reliable. Oh, it's not you again. And then you get complaints. And at that point, you're off. You're off the gig. And then you have one less opportunity, and you do that a bunch of times, the opportunities dry up and nobody wants to work with you. So the way you get around this is you only take on work that you will do. And when it's in the diary, it's in the diary. And if someone says, I can offer you a gig for an extra $50, you just say, I've already got a gig. I'm really sorry. I honor what's in. Because the person who offered it to you will respect that. The person who gave you the gig will respect that. And I promise you, I've gone through this so many times, I have sacked many musicians off the back of 20, 30, $40 where they've said, but this gig is more. And I've said, you're going to lose hundreds of gigs, which is thousands of dollars off the back of you messing me around for 20, 30 or $40. And some of them have gone, I'm going to take the higher pay. So, rule number 1 of the 10 commandments, honor your gigs that you take on. Number 2, don't leave people on the battlefield. You are in this together with a bunch of other musicians. You might not have that much gear to set up and pack down, but you are there until the end, just like everybody else. If somebody leaves half an hour before the end because they've packed up their stuff and they've selfishly just thought for themselves and just left, not helping everyone carry stuff out, I don't ever want to work with that musician ever again. That is leaving your friends on the battlefield. You arrive together, you leave together. Number 3, learning songs is not optional. You can't just turn up and go, what do you know? What do you know? Learning songs is part of being a musician. And what I mean by that isn't just learning the songs. I mean really learning the songs. I mean the parts. I mean the feel. I mean the sounds. How you get the frequencies. I mean the tempo. Everything about that song is learning a song. It's not just going, yeah, to listen in the car, I kind of get it. That is disrespecting the song, which means you're disrespecting everyone on that gig. And if you want to be a professional musician, you have to be better than that. So you have to learn songs not so that you can play them right. You have to learn songs so that you cannot play them wrong. Number 4, your time is their time. Now what that means is if the contract says turn up at 5 p.m., you turn up at 5 p.m. Why? Because they're paying you to turn up at 5 p.m. And if there's traffic, that's your fault. That's your responsibility to factor that in. It's your responsibility to say, hey, there's probably going to be traffic. That's what happens on the roads. So therefore, I'm going to add an extra hour on. Why? Because I want to be there when I'm supposed to be there. Because otherwise, you're adding pressure. You're not absorbing pressure. You're adding pressure on everyone else on that gig. The pressure that they feel when you're not there for setup. The pressure that they feel when they don't know if you're going to get there on time. All of that adds up to the pressure of the night that instead of absorbing, you are putting on. Number 5, whilst you might be turning up to do a gig, you are representing somebody else. You are representing a band. You are representing an artist. You are representing an agency. You are representing a company, which means when you turn up, you need to be respectful. You can't just wear some scraggy old t-shirt and a pair of shorts. That is disrespectful to the people who are paying you to do that job. The same thing with your courteousness and your attitude. And for musicians who are saying, where's the food? I'm supposed to get fed. There's supposed to be food on the contract. I'm sure there is. But how you go about that means you're representing the agency. And if you fuck it up, then the agency will get a bad name. And if you mess it up, the company gets a bad name. And if you mess it up, the artist gets a bad name. So it's your responsibility to remember that you represent other people outside of yourself.
Guys, quick interruption. You're clearly releasing music and serious about getting results. So have you checked out DK Music Business Academy? It's got over 50 hours worth of courses, including the Roadmap to 1 Million Streams course. What have you got to lose? 7-day free trial, links in the description. Let's crack on with the video.
Number 6, industry standard gear is industry standard for a reason, which means when musicians turn up to play with you, there is a certain expectation on what you bring. And so therefore, if you're a guitarist or a bass player and you bring a Fender, happy days. If you are a bass player and the guitarist turns up and he's got an Ibanez RG series, I'm shitting my pants. Why? Because if you think that's a good idea, what else is going to happen on this gig? And the same goes for your amp, the same goes for your drums and your cymbals. I don't want to see bite marks out of the cymbals. I don't want to see a pedal board which has been half made on the day with leads flying everywhere, because all you're doing is you're making everyone else nervous because this feels that you are inexperienced and now your problem is my problem. Number 7, respect the gig. This might be your 4th gig of the week, but for somebody, this is a huge event. It might be a party, it might be a corporate gig, it might be a wedding, it might be a festival, but for somebody, their knackers are on the line. They've spent a lot of time, effort, and money making sure that this is the perfect event. It might be your 100th gig of the year, but you have to respect that this is not about you. This is about somebody who wants this date to be the perfect event. And that means even if it's not your favorite venue, even if it's not your favorite musicians, even if it's not your favorite gear, you are there to do a certain job, which means you go over and above. It means if they want you to play for an hour, you do an hour and 10 minutes. If they want you to play for 2 hours, you do 2.5 hours. If they're expecting this song, you're going to add in that song. If they've asked if you know a song, you're going to go away in the break and you're going to learn it. Why? Because this is an important day for them, and therefore we respect that. Number 8, you are the chaser, which means once you take on your gig, you are responsible for that gig. If there's information you haven't got, you have to chase it. And if it hasn't come to you, it's not ideal, but it's your responsibility. So you have to go after it. You have to say, are there any songs I need to learn? Is there anything I need to know? Give me the information. Give me more information. If you just go, no, my gig, I'm just going to turn up and play, you are not respecting the people around you, the people who are paying you, the company and everybody else. And what you're doing is you're piling pressure on other people. You are not absorbing that pressure. So therefore, in order to be the most prepared you can be, It is your responsibility to chase up to make sure you have all of the information. Number 9, my personal pet peeve, don't poach work. If you turn up to do a gig for a company or an agency and someone comes up and says, "You're great, I'd love to have you play at my party," don't say, "Wicked, let's undercut and get a gig out of this for ourselves." It's disrespectful to someone who gave you an opportunity. The right thing to do is to say, "Absolutely, let me get you in touch with our agent." And that's the agent who booked you, not a different agent, because they deserve, with all of the advertising, the marketing, the sales, and the courteousness to get you that gig, they deserve a cut of the next one. You wouldn't believe how many musicians or bands will try and get an extra 30 or 40 bucks just so they can undercut an agent, only for the agents to find out and never work with them ever again. It's an absolute waste of time and resources. Your best bet is to look after the agents who will look after you. And number 10 is so obvious and hardly ever gets done, which is at the end of the gig, you say thank you to everyone. You say thank you to the venues. Venues and bands have a very difficult relationship most of the time because they hate each other. So we need to turn that around. We need to say thank you to the sound engineers, to the venues, to the staff, to the client, especially to the client, to anyone else who's hanging around. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We had such a great time. It was so fun. You could lie through your teeth. You could be thinking, this was horrific. This was the worst gig of my entire life. I hated every second of it. But what comes out of your mouth is, thank you so much for the opportunity. Oh, this is amazing. I really enjoyed it. Your friends are great, even though I appreciate that someone puked in my shoe. But I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Because those people will start talking about you and you will get more gigs. But if you do it wrong, those people will talk about you for all of the wrong reasons. And one thing I have definitely learned over the years is that it is a very small world in the music industry. And these people will come back time and time and time again. So just start looking after them from now. It makes things so much easier. I have musician friends that I have been working week in and week out with since 2008. And I love them. And I respect them so much as musicians and they respect me. And because of that, I can't give them more gigs. I can't pay them more money. If I could, I would. But I've got other musicians that I know they won't be there in a couple of weeks because they don't follow the code, because they're thinking for themselves. They're thinking all about, this is my short term, give me some money and I'm out mentality. And that means they're not going to be there in 5 years or 10 years, which means they're not going to have a long relationship with an agency or with me or with anyone else who's hiring them. And that's when you get the circle of shit. And what the circle of shit is going, oh, we only get the crappy gigs. Of course you do, because you don't get great feedback, because you're constantly having deps and people aren't saying this is an amazing band because you're not an amazing band, because you're never together doing the same thing. And then you get another average gig and another average feedback. Why? Because you're not taking pride in what you do. And if you don't take pride in what you do, why is anyone else going to take pride in you? And at that point, you are in the circle of shit. We only have a few gigs. We don't have enough gigs. We don't get paid enough. We can't put our prices up. Why? Because we're in the circle of shit. So let me finish by saying this. I believe that we are about to hit a major economic recession. And I don't mean in the UK or the US, I mean pretty much worldwide. If you look at every country from Canada to the UK to Europe to France to Germany to the US, everyone is blaming their politicians, and this is a worldwide problem after the last 2 years we've had. Whatever happens, we are about to enter a shitstorm. When a shitstorm happens, what we have to do is be at the top of the food chain, which means if there was 100 gigs and now there's 10, that's fine, as long as you're in the top 10. But if you're number 80 or number 90, you're out. So therefore, the 10 commandments have just become the most important 10 commandments of any musician's life. And anyone who's 15 years deep into playing 3 times a week will be just going, well, this is obvious stuff. The problem is there's far too many musicians who over the last 2 or 3 years have had it easy pre-pandemic until now, and it's about to get tough. And this is where we really see who's got it. This is where we really see who can handle it when it's a competition. Because I promise you, when you're up against me, I can fuck you up. So therefore, we have to be careful. We have to think this is a long-term relationship with agents, with musicians, with you as a musician. So therefore, these 10 commandments just became really, really important. What I want to know from you is, what's the commandment I've missed out? What is the 11th commandment? I want to know in the comment below. Let me know. Tell me the one thing that I've missed out. That's the most important thing that you think that's going to help musicians have that long-term career. I would love to know, because I would love to add it to my own 10 commandments. Otherwise, guys, do me a favor, hit the like button. It does make a huge difference. And I want to try and help musicians, especially at this time. And that will really help musicians all over the world. Otherwise, come and be a part of this community, hit subscribe, and go get some work. This is the time where we get the work. Otherwise, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys soon.